Hi, everyone. Anna Garcia and defense attorney Allison Treasel here of True Crime Daily, the podcast. We have a short update on the Delphi murder case. We reported last week that after 5 years, police have finally made an arrest in the case. And many of you asked us to monitor this case and update it. Now, the thing here, Allison, is that we don't have an awful lot of information. And that's because the court records have been sealed on the person who's been arrested. And that's creating, a huge vacuum for many people to figure out what was the connection. I'm going to do a summary, and then I want to discuss with you what's happened here with the judge recusing himself from this murder case. It's really extraordinary what's happening. So just to bring everyone up to speed, 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German of Delphi, Indiana, were found dead on Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2017, in a wooded area about half a mile from a bridge and a hiking trail. The two went off on a walk the day before, and they never showed up at the designated pickup spot. Libby was able to make a 43-second video with her cell phone of a man that they engaged on the bridge. The images of the man were released along with a short audio clip where you can hear a man say, "down the hill." So what's interesting is, after 5 years, Allison, thousands of tips, video, audio, images, 2 different sketches, police finally, 5 years later, arrest 50-year-old Richard Allen on October 26. Now, they charged him with 2 counts of murder. However, the court records have been sealed. All we know is he was married, lived in Delphi, worked at the CVS. He even printed photos of the girls at the CVS for the families for the funeral. Everyone in town, whether you were a police officer, a teacher, the garbage collector, because there was only one drugstore like this at CVS, would have gone into the CVS. And if they didn't know him, they probably would remember he's the guy who works there. But that's all we know.
Anna, what is, if he in fact did this, he was literally hiding in plain sight. These are the scariest because everybody knew him and he filled their prescriptions and he had children and he's married and he lives in the community among them. And you think, oh my gosh, it could be anybody. If, that we know, anybody that we come in contact with. We don't know a lot. As someone that handles cases and covers cases, it is very rare that we truly don't know the reason for the arrest. Even if it's a one-liner, DNA connects. Suspect gave a statement that implicated him. There's usually a one-line explanation, but in this case, authorities have been so tight-lipped that we really don't know what it is. All of us will remember that video was chilling, hearing that voice. Anyone that has ever heard about this case remembers it. And the fact that she videoed that quick video, it stays with you. So some amazing police work has to have been done because having that video with any man's voice, a flash of a picture, that's certainly not enough to make an arrest. So I, like everybody else, am so curious to see and so interested to see what actually led to his arrest because we really don't know.
There was a huge, huge public outcry with his arrest when the records were sealed. Many people demanding to know, look, I don't know what right the public has to know. Generally, it is a public process. There are times when records are sealed because the investigation is still ongoing. You're right. Generally, we're given a nugget of why this person is connected to this crime, but there's been no nugget. But here's what's happened, which I think is extremely important. The judge that sealed those records, the judge has pulled himself off the case. Apparently, it appears based on his statements, he can't handle the attention and the stress and the public outcry. It's shocking to me. Carroll County Judge Benjamin Diener has recused himself, pulled himself off the case because he says that his family and his court staff are being threatened and hounded by the public. On November 3rd, the judge said he was upset about some YouTube videos, which included pictures of his family. The judge wrote, quote, "The public's bloodlust for information before it exists is extremely dangerous. All public servants administering this action do not feel safe and are not protected." So now the Indiana Supreme Court has appointed another judge, Judge Francis Gull of Allen County, to hear the case against Richard Allen. So, Allison, what's interesting is one of the local channels was, writing back and forth using the Indiana Public Records Act, petitioning the court saying, look, we think we have a right to know some information. For example, prosecutors said, there was no bail. Well, bail was set at $20 million, but that was sealed. And not all the information came out. Is that significant? I don't know. Transparency, I believe, is important to having trust, the public trust in our system. Look, I want to make sure there's justice for Abby and Libby, and I want to make sure that the trial and that nothing interferes with the gathering of the information and the evidence. But to have a judge just say, that's it, I can't take the phone calls anymore. I don't have the staff for this. I'm pulling myself out of this. This has me worried.
No, I mean, it's unusual. It is unusual to say the least. But when we're talking about interests here, right, we're talking about three competing interests. One is the public's right to know, and you want to make the system a transparent public system where people understand what's going on. The other is the defendant. The defendant is entitled to a fair trial. And if there's too much publicity, which is bound to be negative, gets out about the case, and that jury is impaneled from that town that's heard months and months of negative reports, that's not fair to the defendant who's entitled to a fair and impartial jury. The third factor, which very well may be the case here, is that you don't want, if it's still an ongoing investigation where you're still shoring up the details of your case as a prosecutor, you don't want the public knowing too much information. You don't want to, you don't want witnesses who may come out to speak to you be unwilling because there's so much media coverage. So those three competing interests are at play here for sure. I still think it's odd that we don't even have a one-liner. We don't even know what it is that connected the police after 5 years, high publicity case, much media attention. These are some of the saddest cases around, these two beautiful young girls. Why did they arrest the guy that worked at the pharmacy? Why?
We don't know. And what's interesting is with this local station and other news organizations, petitioning for more information, again, under the Indiana Public Records Act, that there is actually going to be a hearing coming up later this month to address what, if anything, can be released to the public. And as part of this discourse, they released his latest mugshot, which we're going to show you. And the other thing that happened right before the judge recused himself is that he took suspect Richard Allen out of the county jail and moved him to an undisclosed state prison for his own safety. The judge made it clear.
Right. He's in protective custody. So again, if I'm going to be an armchair detective here, something has happened, right? So he has been threatened. His life has been threatened. It was not the judge. It was the sheriff that asked the judge to move him to protective custody. So there was an incident there. We don't know whether it was a threat or we don't know. But, people, when it's a high publicity case and the killing of children is involved, whether or not he did it, inmates don't appreciate that very much, and they may threaten someone's life. But this mystery is far from over. This case is far from over because again, there's going to come a point where we will learn why he was arrested. And it may be at this upcoming hearing. It may very well be at this upcoming hearing.
Look, I don't know. I think we have to weigh the right to justice for the victims and their families, the right to a fair trial for the person accused, and, a sense of sharing some of the information in a public way, because we know bad things can happen under the cover of darkness. It's always important to have some level of transparency. So in this discussion, I want to read from this email. So Channel 13 was emailing the judge, again, trying to get some of this information to be made public, or at least to have a discussion in public about why it is sealed. Okay? These are reasonable requests. So the judge responds, and this is the response, and this has been published by the TV station. It's just insight into what's going on here. The judge wrote, quote, "Respectfully, I need a team of people who can handle these requests for alleged public information where there is no public information." He went on to explain that this is a small court staff, that he is overwhelmed by, quote, "the storm of requests that he's gotten." And then the judge writes this. This is incredible. Just, quote, "Just so the world knows, the Carroll Circuit Court consists of me, Benjamin A. Diener, the judge. My court reporter was hired Friday and began Monday. My bailiff answers the phone, has no experience and no knowledge about the legal process. Thankfully, there is a court administrator that has experience, but she has duties regarding everything going on in the court." And he writes, "That's it, period. So I am begging," this is the judge, "I am begging for some assistance to shield me, the court, from this storm so that I, the court, can keep running the court. Otherwise, I'll do what?" Question mark, he writes. "Read to everyone Rule 6A of the Indiana Rules of Court Rules on access to court records and explain to everyone that the Supreme Court and the statute allows for this precise relief? It is not the court who has a duty to notify the public. It is the prosecuting attorney's office." Anyway, the judge goes on and just says, I do not have the time, and my staff does not have the time to deal with this and these requests.
Well, what's interesting is, when judges recuse themselves, they don't have to give any explanation at all. They just can recuse themselves. So, but he bent over backward to give this long explanation. There are no uniform rules in how courts must conduct themselves when it comes to the media. This is now going to be turned over to a female judge, and she may very well see this case quite differently. And she may say, "I welcome the media attention that this case gets. I think the public deserves to know. And I want my courtroom to be a case study in how to effectively balance those interests that I talked about, the media, public information, the prosecutor, the defense, and do it in a way that makes sense. I'm not going to let the media control my case. But I do think the public deserves to know." So,
and I do believe that the State Department of Justice, and whether that's the Attorney General and all the different divisions, I do feel for the Judge Diener in this, where he's like, "It's me, it's a court reporter, and a bailiff.
It's a small town.
It is a small town. It's 3,000
Right.
people in the city of Delphi." So I hear him, and he's like, "You know what? You're going to mount a massive national trial here in my little courtroom, but you're not helping me, and people are after me and my family." And I get that, and that's not fair, and that's not right. However, perhaps he could have asked for help. I mean, he's just decided, I don't want any part of this.
Right.
And so hopefully, with all of this becoming public, that the state of Indiana is going to step up and give support to this court, because whatever court hears this, they need help. Yeah. They need help. And there's something that you said off the very beginning that I really hear. And I think the fact that he's pulled himself out of this case, like just a few days into it, is probably a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, when someone is telling you that they don't want to handle the case, you should listen.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely. So that hearing that we talked about whether anything will be revealed to the public and or any explanations as to why the court record is sealed, that's going to be held on November 22nd. So we'll know a lot more information. Again, transparency helps to build confidence in the system. We want to make sure that if you appreciate these updates and you want us to keep doing these updates because this is a case so many of you are interested in, let us know. Give us some feedback and we'll continue doing them.